Hello everybody and welcome back to PSGL season number 40. We're here with the F2 or PlayStation F2 division here in Jeddah, and I've only ever seen that site in Jeddah once before in league racing, so this is going to be a fascinating qualifying. But I am here in the commentary box with my commentary partner for this season, Nathan. I was away last week doing F1, filling in for that division, but back now and should be here for the rest of the season with you, Nathan. So how was the first race? How are you doing? I've seen it once. I had one league race last year, I think, where there was a bit of rain in the race, but this is the first time I've seen it at such a high level. PSF2 are going to have to deal with the rain in Jeddah. I would imagine, Nathan, that not many of the drivers have practiced for this. Yeah, indeed. I'm just getting word that they can't hear you in the chat, Nathan. So let me see if it's anything on my end, but I don't believe so. Just make sure you've got it on in the party voice chat, and you put party settings, and then you've got your.
They should be able to hear me now.
Should be able to hear you now. Chat, can we hear Nathan? Yeah, with that technical issue aside, Jeddah is certainly a track that can separate the wheat from the chaff, as it were. You tend to get quite large qualifying gaps around this circuit compared to other circuits. You just get some drivers around here, Nathan, that this track really suits, don't you? And I'll hand over to you to take us around a lap with IRT Phil of the Jeddah Corniche circuit.
Yeah, absolutely. And these drivers will feel very comfortable as IRT Phil comes down in towards 2-1, just rides the apex to the left, onto the right hand side, just feathering the throttle on the way out. We've not seen rain around here too many times, so he has to be careful as he comes down towards turn 4 at the left hander, a little bit deep, trying to avoid the wall to the left hand side. Does not want to get his foot down at all here. He's so skeptical, and he knows that he can easily lose it around here. Nobody has practiced for rain as we come around turn 7, 8, 9 and 10, and then down towards the left hander hairpin at towards sector 2. So into the left hander we go, on board with the Haas driver, and he's just struggling with that wheel. You can see him left and right, the snapping of the rears every time he tries to put his foot down, and he's just struggling so much as we come in towards turn 16 and 17, and then down towards turn 18 and 19, and then the DRS will kick in. Do they get DRS even though the rain is coming here, or are they going to wait? So no, they do not get DRS, but it is a purple sector 2. Of course, he is the first driver to set a lap, and then in towards turn 22 and 23, in towards sector 3 we go, and then around the long left-hander. This is where we'll see the overtakes here this evening, hopefully, if we don't carry on with the rain as we go in towards turn 27. This circuit here in Jeddah has the most corners of any other track on the calendar, 27 corners, and they are flat out for 80% of it. Down towards the line, IRT Phil, a 140.4.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, 27 corners, only about 50% of them are actually corners, I would say.
I know, yeah.
But yeah, officially 27 corners on this circuit, and IRT Phil, that was a scrappy lap as Steve, there we go, straight to pole position for now at 39.9. And yeah, I was surprised to see that lap from Phil not immediately beaten. There were quite a few corners where he lost so much time. I think turn 3 especially was a big one where he lost a ton of time, and Zviadek now goes to pole with a 39.4. Raffi just behind, just 4 hundredths behind him, and as the laps tick by, the drivers are going to get better and better, as is the track. And I do wonder whether it will dry out later in the session. There's still 12 minutes to go, so plenty of time. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because of how the track's going to change, how the drivers are going to get more accustomed to it, and, well, EvanNye and Gatkowski a long way ahead of everyone else to start off with. We've got Jensen as well to P5, and someone in the chat asking what our opinion on this track is. Well, I personally really like racing on this track. I think it's a great a track that's great fun to hook up, but I have a lot of crashes at this corner right here that we're running with Jensen on through turn number 3. It's a very difficult corner because you've got to go so close to the inside wall, and if you get it slightly wrong, you're going to be without a wheel on your wagon and out of the race or the session. So yeah, that's what the drivers have got to be careful of, although it's going to be a little easier to not make that sort of mistake in these conditions, isn't it, Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of practice here in Jeddah. And you know, if you really want to focus and you want to get a decent result, you've got to do quite a few laps, because you'll start to find the best corners, the best entrance to the sectors, the best exit out of the chicanes. You have to put in quite a bit of work to get the best lap out of this circuit. But nobody on this circuit would have predicted that we would have had rain this evening. So nobody has been prepared for this at all. So as the circuit continues to progress and the rain continues to fall, it's only very light rain, and especially in a circuit like Jeddah that is so warm, we'll see that circuit start to get a little bit more pacey as we go on through qualifying. And as you can already see, the lap times are significantly different between the top 3 and the rest of the grid. So it'll be interesting to see what the other drivers can do as qualifying progresses.
Yeah, indeed. I was talking at the start of the stream about about drivers tending to be one-hit wonders around here sometimes, and you get quite big gaps in qualifying, but obviously the rain is going to compound that even more. So we're going to get some big gaps, I think, up and down the grid, much more than we're used to in this division and indeed in this league. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, because who is going to adapt the quickest? Because like you said, Nathan, who's going to have practiced for this? A wet weather qualifying at Jeddah. So it's all going to be about who's the most adaptable driver that can get on pole. And actually, with the dirty air on this game, qualifying being a lot more important, and especially on this circuit, which tends to be a bit of a DRS train a lot of the time, getting far up in qualifying is going to be very, very important around here, more so than usual.
Yeah, it's going to be so interesting, as you said. VNT told me the Alpine just went up to P4 as well there with a 138.9. Oh, and Zviadek a 138.001. So the Haas driver has gone provisional pole with 9 minutes to go here in Saudi Arabia. And as you said, Ghost, it is going to be so tricky for these drivers, and I cannot wait to see what it creates for us, because it won't be the norm. So you've got Zviadek in P1, Christian in P2 in the Ferrari, but Sapala comes through in the Alpine going up to P3. So EvanNye goes on to provisional pole in P1 in the Aston Martin 137.6. So the track is already...
EvanNye seems to be the quickest to adapt to this circuit in the wet weather. I was watching him in F1 last week, actually. So he's right at home here in Jeddah in these conditions at the moment. Max van der Geest into P2, current championship leader, of course, after winning last week in F2. And What did you think about his win last week, Nathan? Did he look a championship
Yo,
challenger driver, or was it a?
He was incredible, absolutely incredible, from start to finish. His strategy, his pace, he was absolutely unbelievable. It was Max Verstappen-esque from the Mercedes driver, and hopefully we'll be seeing a lot more of that next season if Max does join Mercedes. But he was phenomenal from start to finish. He had a huge gap to the rest of the grid, and just nobody could even come close to him. Nobody could touch him. He was the only driver in the 102s in qualifying as well. It was just an all-round phenomenal performance.
Well, that's glowing praise to Max van der Geest from his performance last week, but he's got EvanNye to deal with today. 600ths of a second between the two of them at the moment in this qualifying session, but look at the gaps up and down the grid. We're used to seeing the whole grid separated by less than a second in PSGL, but today, no such scenario. It's 3 seconds, over 3 seconds from 1st to 20th, and there's a lot of time in it for a lot of these drivers, especially as the track starts to improve, as it will do. Sam van Marsing currently in Sector 1, I'm riding on board with in the McLaren, down in 12th place right now. Let's see if he can make any ground in the first sector as he slides through that last corner of the sector, and he is indeed half a second up, so big improvement on the way possibly for Sam van Marsing. But it's so difficult to hook up a lap around here. I actually think this rain might make it a little bit less pressured to hook up a lap around this circuit, Nathan. I don't know if you agree, because of the overall speed, the average speed being a lot lower, means that it's easier to throw yourself into the corners, especially with the oversteer and extra control maybe that the rain can give you through the apexes. So I think maybe a little less, right to the limit, going at full speed through corners with these conditions. But of course, as the track continues to evolve, it is going to get faster and faster.
Yeah, the drivers will be more reserved when racing around here, especially with the rain. They're a little bit slower, so they can take the corners a little bit more reserved, and they can take them that little bit less slower. Yes, it's a little bit more difficult as Sam Van comes through and it goes up to P7, does improve by 7/10 of a second. But as you were saying, you can be a little bit more going into the chicanes. It's a little bit slower, as it's very fast paced around Jeddah. So when you're going through these corners, you're at the limit, on the absolute limit. And as that Kwiatkowski comes through to take provisional pole with a 1:37.3 in the Papaya McLaren, what a lap that is, as the evolution of the track begins to improve. But as you were saying, as you're coming through the circuit, if you're flat out and if it's dry, you can make one slight mistake and it's game over. But with the rain, you can sort of slow it down a little bit. You can go a bit more reserved into the corners, and you can take them a little bit more chances going around the circuit. It's slower, it's a little bit easier to navigate. It's just keeping control of the rear end of that car that the drivers will struggle with.
Yeah, absolutely, and the time's starting to get closer together now as the drivers get more accustomed to this wet Jeddah circuit. We've got someone quite slow in the final corner there, but I think they were just getting out of others' way. Kwiatkowski, big lap to get to pole position, and Chris Rebel up to P5 as well in his Williams for today. IRT Phil with a massive improvement as well. He was down in 18th or 19th before that lap, and big improvements as the grid continues to get more accustomed and the track continues to get faster. Lars Kramer at the moment in the Kick Sauber, down in 18th place. What can he do as he heads through Sector 2? We'll get his sector time shortly, but I think actually maybe he's backed out.
4/10 up.
Not quite. He is 4/10 up, yeah. So here he goes through the middle sector. We've got plenty of drivers on track at the moment setting laps, including EvanNye, who's just started a lap, I believe 1.1 seconds for Lars Kramer. So the gaps are starting to come down from up and down the grid now. Just one corner to go for the Kick Sauber driver, who's been the protagonist of the last minute or so. But he's got traffic ahead that could be a bit of a struggle. Might have been a distraction. They got out the way, but Did they give him any dirty air or any distraction through that final corner? And in fact, Lars into the pits. He wants to time this right. It may have been a big improvement for him, but he's coming in for fresh inters. He wants to get the timing for this lap spot on, Nathan.
Yeah, that is really surprising because he was 1.1 up. I know there was some traffic in front of him as Zawadic comes through in the Haas, a 136.9. So the first driver to get into the 136s here in Jeddah under the rain of the night sky. So Zawadic into the 136s. But yeah, he was just seemed to be struggling a little bit through the last sector with that traffic in front of him, and that really hindered his lap, and he thought, no, this is going to be the only lap that I really push, so I don't want to jeopardise that with them two cars in front of him. But I thought he was on for a decent banker lap to just get up the grid, but he wants to go all in or nothing at this point.
Yeah, I think a lot of drivers right now on cool-down laps, recharging their batteries and maybe trying to get the timing right, because it's going to be, it might well be a case of last across the line has the best chance at pole, because that's often what these wet sessions are like in qualifying. VNT Tom goes to second place, so this grid could be all over the place today with these conditions, because it's, like I said, it's going to be last driver across the line with the best chance. So whoever times it right, whether or not they're going to have the pace in the dry in the race, could get a shock pole here, and Zviadek currently in that position. But you know, you've got EvanNye very strong so far this quali, 6 and 7 tenths down respectively, so it just goes to show how much improvement is left in this circuit as they continue to tumble, with Matisse going to P4. But Max in his Mercedes starting his next run. Jensen has retired. Is that in the pit lane? I think so. So no more running for him, and he's going to topple down the grid, you have to think.
He will. Yeah, Jensen there. I mean, once these drivers come through and start setting these final laps, I think Jensen will find himself down probably in the bottom three, barring a couple of mistakes. I just want to go back to Lars Kramer, as you were saying in the Kick Sauber on lap there. Lars Kramer did an absolutely outstanding job last weekend in Austria. He ended up getting on the podium from out of nowhere with a perfect strategy. So if he can do that this evening, or even get a half decent qualifying lap and get to the front of this grid, then he can come and get another decent result here this evening for round 2 in Jeddah. But some of these drivers now getting ready for their final runs. We have a McLaren just coming up towards the line. That is Getkowski, who's already been on provisional pole once this evening on his outlap, coming up towards the line. So he will ride on board with the Papaya driver as we go down in towards turn 1 here for round 2 at PSGL. So just slipping and sliding through turn 1 and 2, just rides the apex through there as we come through turn 3, and then back onto the throttle, just feathering onto the battery, trying to build that little bit of speed. A very tricky part of the circuit there as he comes around turn 4 and then 5 and 6, and then in towards the left-hander once again, and 7 and 8. That is Sapala in the Alpine that goes provisional pole at 136.6, and then Max in the Mercedes, your race winner from last weekend, with a 136.2. They are coming through thick and fast here in Jeddah. Christian in the Scuderia Ferrari goes up to P2. The checkered flag has waved here in Saudi Arabia. Christian up to P2. We are on board with Getkowski in the McLaren. Can he do anything to respond to these drivers?
Zviadek to P2, big lap from him at the end, but these laps are going to keep tumbling down as the session wears on. Just everyone on their final runs now. Getkowski coming through into the final sector. Can he spring a surprise here at the end of this session? Nico sprung a surprise. It's a Mercedes front row lockout right now, but we're watching Getkowski as he heads towards the final corner. The McLaren driver once on provisional pole in this session. Can he do it again round the final corner? Loses the rear a tad, but he's going to head all the way to the line, use everything he's got left, and it's not enough. Only a 36.5 for Getkowski. He stays in 5th place. M. Sipala not improving. Chris Rebel can only manage P8. as Kevin Zunneberg goes to 9th place. EvanNye, 8.5 tenths up in the middle sector. He's been on pole as well at one point in this session. Can he find his way back up to the top? Just one corner to go for the Aston Martin driver. Plenty other drivers coming in, but no one can challenge that lap from Nico. EvanNye, one final chance. Down towards the line. What can the Aston Martin driver do? It's got to be good. It's P4. It's not enough. And it's looking like a Mercedes front row lockout. Matisse is not improving. Neither is Sam Van Marising. What a session for the Mercedes duo, Nathan.
Wow, a Mercedes 1-2 here in Jeddah. Mercedes masterclass in the rain. 1-2 on the starting grid. That's exactly where you want your two drivers, blocking out the rest of the grid, going down in towards turn 1. That is brilliant.
Absolutely fantastic for the team. What a strange session here in Jeddah, and it's Nico who takes pole position with the championship leader alongside him. Zviadek P3 with EvanNye lining up in 4th place. Then it's Christian, Gatkowski, Sipala, Phil, Sieb and Tom rounding up the top 10, and then it's Lars Kramer, Chris, Kevin Zunneberg, Nico, Ivan Eskrig, Matisse, Spyros, Jensen, Sam Van Marising and Rafi, unfortunately, at the back of the grid for that one. But wow, what a session that was. And it really sets us up for the race. Imagine if it's wet for the race as well. I can't think that can possibly happen. It's got to be dry, surely.
There we go.
There we go. Dry race.
Back to normality.
At least for now. Who knows what could happen later on. But yeah, it's going to be a fascinating race, I'm sure. It's a lot of drivers are going to be a little out of position here as to how we would have expected had it been a dry qualifying session. I'm surprised it kept raining throughout the entire session, to be honest. But there we have it. The drivers had to adapt, and it was the Mercedes who were the kings of that in the end. Nathan, just before I hand back to you, a couple of people are saying you're crackly in the chat.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. I'm just going to switch the cable over on my mic and see if that helps, because I've just seen some of the comments, so just bear with me.
No worries. Turn yourself down a bit maybe as well. I know I told you to turn yourself up earlier. But yeah, we will try and sort that for you. But yeah, not much can be done about technical issues if we try and fix them and it doesn't work. But thank you for bringing that to our attention, everyone. But yeah, this is going to be a absolute classic of a race in Jeddah, I think. We've got 20 cars on this grid who will all probably feel, other than the two Mercedes, that they were out of position in that qualifying session with such strange conditions here in Jeddah. I would wager that most drivers on this grid have never seen rain on this circuit before. It is that rare on this games, or well, it's just in general, isn't it? So let's see how the race transpires. I don't know if Nathan's back yet.
I am back. I've put a new cable in, so hopefully that will eliminate. I found that sometimes when I'm using a mic, depending on the cable that I use, sometimes it can come across a little crackly, so I'm just hoping that helps a little bit.
I hope so, yeah. But it would be a shame to have technical issues plaguing our first proper stream together. But I'm sure it will all be fine. But yeah, we're just waiting for the race to get underway. Nathan, who's your pick for the win?
Oh God, there's so many names in with a chance, and I just can't go off the P1 and the P2 just because it was dry. Obviously Nico is looking brilliant with him qualifying on pole position in that Mercedes. But I think Zviadek in the Haas as well, and then EvanNye in the Aston Martin, he's looking very quick. Christian in the Ferrari. I mean, there's so many names there, but I think tonight might be the night that Zviadek takes over.
Oh, well, we will find out very shortly. It's going to be a lot of drivers trying desperately to find their way through the pack, but we'll see if they get a little too desperate as the race wears on. predict this. A race in Jeddah, there's got to be a DNF at some point, you would think. Even with drivers this talented, usually you see someone make a mistake at Jeddah, and mistakes at this circuit are so often fatal to your race.
Yeah, what I would say goes is, oh, here we go, lights out.
4, 5, red lights. And we're underway in Jeddah for the second race of this season. Nico, down towards turn 1, gets the lead, or keeps the lead from his teammate as there's changes all the way further back through turns 1 and 2. Side by side goes Christian and Gatkowski down towards turn 4. Surely not. Oh, they're going to go for it. It's Christian all the way around the outside. Hangs it there. What a move that is from the Ferrari, but the McLaren stays there as well. And Gatkowski keeps the position. How on earth they're still pointing in the right direction, I do not know. No contact as well. Fantastic racing on this opening lap between those guys, but it's Nico and Max van der Geest who had a perfect getaway, and they continue to lead this 1 and 2. There's battles further back as well. EvanNye through on Matisse Gullet, who's having to defend from Raffi, as that's Sam van Marissing into the wall further back. Well, it hasn't taken long for the first mistake of the session, and unfortunately it's Sam van Marissing who has been the first victim of this tricky circuit. But the two Mercedes are trying to streak away from EvanNye already, who has made up a position. The biggest winner from lap 1 so far, Raffi in the kick Sauber up 3. Chris Webber also up 2, but other than that, no one really moving around all that much on this first lap.
Yeah, everybody just sticking to position. EvanNye in the Aston Martin, obviously getting past Zavadek, and they're already half a second clear. And I think that was Matthias Gullit and Nico in the Aston Martin. Nico's coming back in wheel to wheel, and now look at this Sauber and the Red Bull swallowing him up, going down in towards turn 1. And Matthias is losing so many positions there, and the RB of Jensen goes through in towards turn 1. And he is up to P17, so being swallowed up down in towards sector 1. But as you were saying, the two Mercedes, 1 and 2, 7 tenths clear of EvanNye. Zawadi losing a position off the start, but that overtake from the Papaya McLaren was outstanding on Christian and the Ferrari.
Got to have been a mistake from Matisse at the final corner. Surely he lost 4 or 5 positions down towards turn 1, and now there's more mistakes going on. Spyros and Matisse perhaps coming together there. They both have damage in sector 2 right now, so disastrous start for both of those drivers to this lap. But again, towards the front, it's all calm and collected for the two Mercedes. EvanNye just following along. Zviadek just 8 tenths behind. And will we start to see this dirty air have an effect? I think we already are, as Gatkowski is already struggling to stay within that 1 second range. He has a brilliant run through turns 21 and 22 there, so that will have helped him out. But still, I think the dirty air is going to have quite a bit of an effect, especially through sector 1 on this circuit. And you might see this long DRS trim we've got at the moment broken up quite soon. And talking of breaking up, Kevin Zunderberg down the inside of Lars Kramer, trying to get the move done at the final corner for P12. And the two Mercedes, meanwhile, swapping places, all very calmly between the two of them. And I think there'll be plenty of that as the laps wear on in this first stint.
Yeah, I'm surprised we've got overtakes already between the Mercedes drivers. Is there going to be team orders as Spyros is out in the pit lane? The Ferrari of Matisse is in the pit lane getting a new front wing. But yes, Max in the Mercedes, your race winner from Austria in round 1, is now into the lead of the Grand Prix in front of his teammate of Nico. So the Mercedes drivers are going racing here. Mercedes rules in Saudi Arabia, but it's EvanNye in the Aston Martin who is trying to stay with them. 6 tenths is the gap. Ivan Eskrig in the Red Bull is really close to the back of Nico in the other Aston Martin, but not many changes here goes from the start of the grid. I did expect a few more off the starting line.
Yeah, not a lot at all. I think everyone was trying to be a bit cautious into turn 1, and don't forget as well, they've had to adapt again from qualifying, because they had to adapt to the wet weather to start with, and then going into the race they have no formation lap to get to grips with the dry track again, so they have to sort of forget how they drove in qualifying and go back to their normal service around this circuit, but I think the two Mercedes are just going to be looking to swap around whenever they have the opportunity, just using DRS to pull away from the rest of the field. Nico on this occasion not close enough to really make a move without losing them both times, so he stays behind this time, but the gap to EvanNye already nearly a second, and there's danger here of the Mercedes running away with this race if the Aston Martin driver can't keep up with them. It's 9.5 tenths and he's going to be struggling through this first sector with the dirty air, but he gets it spot on, does he? A little bit wide maybe out that last corner of the first S section, but he's just about kept it within a second. But I think those gaps are going to be hovering around 7, 8, 9 tenths up and down the grid for a long time in this race, Nathan.
Yeah, DRS all the way down from P1 to P17 towards Jensen. Matisse onto the soft compounds. Not sure that strategy will work, but who am I to question Ferrari's driver strategy? But as you were saying, the two Mercedes drivers working together, I cannot help but think that Nico strategically has gone, right, Max, you go through, you're the quicker driver, I will stay with you for as long as possible, and let's try and shake off this Aston Martin behind, because everybody is so close and waiting for the opportunity to pounce, and as soon as a driver is out of DRS, that is their opportunity to strike, and that is when they'll be able to get them overtakes, as Gakowski is just about losing DRS to Zavadek in front, but then gets the rear wing open and closes that gap once more.
Yeah, it's very close to everyone here to losing DRS. It's 7 tenths for EvanNye, 8 tenths now. 6, 7, 8 tenths for Gatkowski, 8 tenths for Christian, 6 tenths further back as well for Sieb and Sipala. So these caps really on the edge, and all it's going to take is one mistake. These drivers driving very, very well at the moment to start off this race. We're already on lap 5, but surely a mistake is going to creep in at some point for one of these drivers. The pressure and the dirty air will set in, and the understeer will take them a little wider than they expect, and maybe that'll just lose them the extra tenth or so that's necessary to drop them out of DRS. But at the moment, all these drivers performing flawlessly to start off this Grand Prix, and the Mercedes will start getting a little bit frustrated now because they were so close to dropping that DRS. But now EvanNye is coming back into this race, and Sviadek's just about holding on as well, but it's really on the limit, and like I said, one mistake is going to cost you a lot in this race now.
Yeah, and it just shows the calibre of drivers here, to show exactly how good they are when they can go around Jeddah here, and it's such a long circuit, a long track, the laps are just, it takes so much out of you mentally and physically as well when you're racing around a circuit like Jeddah, 27 corners, and you've got to keep it on track and miss every single corner and every single apex, and you've got to sort of miss it and make sure that you stay focused at all times.
Yeah, absolutely, because especially corners like this one coming up here, this such a tricky left-hander, because especially with the dirty air, it can just throw you out wide with no warning. And let's have a quick look at tyres on the left-hand side. Almost the entire grid, I mean, I think it was the entire grid starting on the medium tyres, with Matisse and Sam Van Mersing with their early pit stops, of course. Matisse going to the softs, interestingly, so that looks like a 2-stop. Sam Van Mersing, can he get to the hards to the end from here? It's going to be tricky for him, because the tyre model on F125 is a lot more punishing than it was last year. But yeah, pretty much universal strategies up and down the grid as Gatkowski briefly dips to over a second his gap to Sviadek, but he just about holds on, and Nico as well struggling to stay. 9 tenths, he's just about holding on, but Sviadek now is struggling. 1.1 seconds, he's got the DRS down here, but is he going to have it down towards turn 1? That's the question. Through the final corner, he's got to nail this. The detection point's just there, so he just about holds on, as does Gatkowski, but it's right on the limit here. Yeah,
Gatkowski just got the rear wing open, and so did Sviadek, so they are really close between each other. The two Mercedes are still dominating in front, but only half a second in front of EvanNye. but 3 attempts separate the two AMG drivers. Still DRS all the way down to P17. Do I think Sam Van can get to the end on them hard? Probably not. This track is so demanding on the tyre, where the degradation is so high around here, so they'll probably have to pit again. But he had to go for that early stop. But it was surprising to see every single driver on the grid start on the mediums. Nobody wanted to go outside of the norm and go for the longer strategy. We know the undercut is so strong around a circuit like Jeddah, so if you go onto the hard compounds and everybody is starting on the mediums, when you do pit, you're going to be so far behind trying to catch up, and then it's so difficult to get an overtake when you're stuck in that DRS train. And these drivers, these are the top of their game. The race IQ and the caliber of drivers you are watching here this evening, they are not of the normal cloth that most drivers are sore from. So these Mercedes drivers know exactly what they're doing in P1 and P2.
Yeah, they do indeed. And just a little thing, maybe turn your volume up slightly again, Nathan. Sorry to mess you around with volume or this stream. Yeah, it's gone a bit quiet recently. But yeah, the Mercedes doing an excellent job out there at the moment. You've got to remember, this may be F2 as Phil comes in for an early stop on those medium tyres, trying to get the undercut here, and it might well work out for him. But yeah, you've got to remember, this might be only the second division of PlayStation, but these are still the top 0.1% of drivers in the world, realistically, at least on PlayStation for sure, and at least, you know, top 0.5% overall. So these drivers know exactly what they're doing. A Sipala, big mistake, and that just shows how difficult this track can be. Even drivers of this caliber can make mistakes like that, and Sipala with no front right end plate, it's going to be very tricky for him. And I think whoever in the chat said that he was going to win this one about a minute ago directly cursed him, so that is your fault, whoever it was in the chat. I think Sipala will definitely be blaming you for that later. But yeah, the Mercedes in a dominant position at the moment, and EvanNye, all he can do at the moment is follow along, and to be fair, he's doing that very well right now.
He is. He's doing a tremendous job, the Aston Martin driver, and then Sipala is just dropping down like a stone in water. Nico and Kevin Zunderberg is going for him. There goes Jensen on Ivan Eskrig, and that is Rafi on Sipala as well, but Jensen got through on the Red Bull driver, so a couple of drivers just struggling. A little bit of damage here on lap 8 of 25, still 17 laps remaining, but now the concentration levels are starting to drop, and this is where the drivers will begin to struggle. But we've got the first couple of drivers in towards the pit lanes. You've got Chris, Kevin Zunderberg, Sipala and Ivan Eskrig, so the damage to the front wing isn't going to be that detrimental when they're in the sort of pit stop window anyway. It will just cost them a couple more seconds.
Yeah, it will, but it could crucially drop them out of the DRS train, and that's going to be the key. Having to repair wing damage can have that effect. I don't know if Sipala did in fact repair it as he comes out the pit lane. He might have chosen not to. No, he did repair it, so he's just going to be hoping, I think, for a safety car to bring him back into this one. There was a big mistake from Chris as well coming into the pit lane. I noticed he just tapped the wall as he came in. I don't know if he got any damage from that. I think he just about got away with it, but that would have definitely been a heart in the mouth moment for the Williams driver. Yeah, Max van der Geest currently controlling this race from the front. It was Nico who qualified on pole, remember, and was leading this race to start with, but the two Mercedes had a very comfortable swap between them for position, just using that DRS to their advantage, and ever since then Nico has not been able to get close enough to re-swap the cars. But that might change this lap unless Nico plans to come into the pits, or either of them. Max faking a little bit to come in the pits, but stays out in the end. I think Nico had a small mistake out of that final corner which cost him down to turn 1 on this occasion. Tom is the next one to peel into the pits, and how big is the undercut going to be? That's the question. We've already seen Phil come in a lap earlier than most, and he is at the head of the drivers who've pitted, half a second ahead of Chris. And we're about to see, yeah, he's ahead of Tom and Jensen as well, significantly so, as Tom just exits the pit lane now well behind. So this could have worked out excellently for Phil. Although his tyres are going to be struggling a little bit more than everyone else towards the end of this race. And with this new tyre model in F125, those extra laps can be oh so more costly. With the percentage just up a few more percent, it can have a big effect, especially when you're in dirty air.
Yeah, I was just about to say that to you, Ghost. Is it not really worth any of these drivers that are stuck in that DRS train? Is Gakowski or Zavadek or EvanNye, is it not worth going for that undercut, getting a couple of laps in? I know they'll be on them older tyres, and as you said, just 1, 2, 3 laps of older tyres is so much more detrimental to a driver's race on F125. Surely though, it is worth trying to get into the lead and defend for position, as Gakowski and Zavadek and even EvanNye in the Aston Martin, if they pit now or even a lap earlier, you can see what the undercut can do with IRT Phil. But there goes Nico, that is Max into the pit lane, and EvanNye, so does Zavadek and Gakowski, so it's Nico that stays out and Christian. How costly will that be come the end of lap 11?
Yeah, here comes Phil down towards turn 1. This is going to be the litmus test. The Haas driver heading down the main straight now. He's going to be well ahead of all of them, Nathan. Kevin Zunneberg sets the fastest lap, but it's IRT Phil who now is well ahead of the former race leader, Max van der Geest, who actually is a little bit closer than I thought it would be. He's still in the DRS, crucially, is the championship leader, but he is going to be behind the two of them crucially, and as we've already seen in the first stint, it's so difficult to overtake around here in these DRS trains, so he's got his work cut out for him, and if he's lost that much time to the undercut, then you can only imagine what Nico, Christian, Lars and Nico are going to lose. Well, the two Nicos, I suppose. Nico, the F3 champion, and also Nico 05. But we've got Mercedes Nico coming through the final sector now, surely heading into the pits on this lap, but it's going to be costly, and IRT Phil will be delighted with the decision he's made at this point in the race, although, like we've said, his tyres are going to be that much worse than the rest of the drivers. I think the main thing that the drivers would have been concerned about and why they didn't pit earlier, Nathan, is probably to do with the DRS. They didn't want to pit and come out in dirty air without the DRS train, as Max now making a move on Chris. The top two come into the pits, but Chris holds firm through the final corner. Lars and Nico staying out towards the front, so they're hoping for something like a safety car in this middle part of the race, as we've got side-by-side action again for the Nets. P2 in this race. Max van der Geest gets it done, does he? There's contact! Oh no! Max into the wall, and the championship leader will be furious with that. Chris is out of the race. Is that the safety car that these top two would have hoped for? Somehow, there's not even a VSC out there, and Lars and Nico will be fuming at the front. They'll have been desperately hoping that that would have brought it out, and it has done, but it's only a VSC. Finally, the yellow flags are waved around the track. But it's only a VSC, so they will get some advantage from this as long as it lasts, but Lars and Nico will have been really hoping for that safety car. It would have put them in an amazing position, but not quite at this point. And yeah, chat having their own discussions about that particular incident, but I know neither driver, neither Chris nor Max, will be particularly happy about that one.
That is so gutting for Max in the Mercedes, who was well in the lead of this Grand Prix, in the provisional lead. Lars, Kramer and Nico, if you had to time a strategy to perfection, that is exactly what they've done here in Jeddah. 12 laps, a huge crash. Christian in the Ferrari is out, Chris in the Williams is out, and Max in the Mercedes hobbling along with front wing damage, with no front wing after that huge crash with the Williams. So the Sauber of Lars, Kramer and Nico in the Aston Martin are both into the pit lane under the VSC. So IRT Phil will be the leader of this Grand Prix as the VSC ends, as they're in the pit lane, so they won't save as much as they thought they were going to save. But Phil is now your race leader. EvanNye in P2, Tom in the Alpine in P3, and then Zawadek in the Haas, Kwiatkowski in the McLaren, then comes Kevin Zunneberg, Nico, and then Lars Kramer and Nico in P8 and P9. Matt in the Mercedes retires in the pit lane. Your race winner from Austria taken out here in Jeddah.
He is not a happy man in that cockpit, I can guarantee it. But look who this has worked out perfectly for. IRT Phil, who took the gamble of coming in a lap or two earlier than everyone else. Oh, but a big slide there through the hairpin is not going to help his cause. And EvanNye in a great position now, just behind this Haas. He looks to be the fastest driver. He has been one of the fastest drivers on circuit today. And look at this, the Mercedes of Nico as well, down in 7th place after that undercut from everyone else. He has got a lot of ground to make up. Lars and the other Nico in the Aston Martin have come out 3.5 seconds well, but if these guys start battling, that is going to bring them ever so much closer as the laps tick by. Here comes EvanNye then. Round the outside he goes of IRT Phil, and he makes that move stick. He's into the lead, but is it going to cost him down towards turn 1? Because the Haas will have DRS as well, as will VNT Tom in the Alpine, and EvanNye could get swallowed up here down towards the first corner. Phil, with a huge amount of overspeed, pulls to the inside, but decides against it. I'm surprised by that, because now EvanNye, with his superior pace, might be able to extend his lead as Lars gets ahead of Nico, as you rightfully pointed out, Nathan, up to P8, but still that gap to the top 7 is what they're going to be watching. 3.5 seconds, and they're going to want to cut that down.
They are, and they're going to be very, very pacey at this point, the drivers. You said about Nico coming out in P6 after that pit stop. Imagine how much he would have lost, Ghost, had the VSC not have come out when it did. So Nico is still in that DRS range, but his tyres are so much fresher than the likes of Phil, but they're only 1 lap fresher than the rest of the grid, plus Tom, who pitted 2 laps earlier. But Lars Kramer now has already taken half a second away from Kevin Zunneberg. Him and Nico in the Aston Martin will be absolutely flying at this stage. So come the end of the race, in 11 laps time, will that make a difference? EvanNye has already pulled off a gap of 1.1 to IRT Phil in the Haas, so he's already feeling the tyre pressures on them hards after 6 laps. He's losing pace. Here comes Tom in the Alpine around the outside down towards turn 27. Tom in the Alpine is up to P2. IRT Phil in the Haas is down to P3. He's now got his teammate of Zavadek behind him as they go down towards turn 1. Can any of these drivers make a move? Here comes Phil on the Alpine into the slipstream, but he's not able to get close enough to make a move on this occasion.
Oh, his teammates Zavadek nearly into the back of him there into turn 1. Nico and Lars swap again, as do Sipala and Jensen further back, but that was very close to Dishasta there into turn 1, just like we saw in Silverstone a week or 2 ago. But EvanNye now over a second ahead, but Tom is charging him down through sector 1. 1.05. It's so close to the DRS, and Tom tantalizingly close, just dips underneath a second there, but the detection point is after the next chicane. Can he get the DRS down towards turn 21? That's what he needs. He needs to nail this chicane. We'll ride on board as he goes through. EvanNye didn't look like he got the best run, but Tom not quite close enough. 1.05. People are telling me to leave the commentary booth for that pun, but I'm afraid you'll be disappointed, guys. Zavadek round the outside with the DRS of his teammate. A much cleaner overtake that time, but the damage has been done. Look at the gap, 1.3 to Tom, and well, Tom is pushing as hard as he can, but we might see the race for the lead peter out here in the middle part of this race. Kwiatkowski now the next driver to get past IRT Phil, who's really struggling at the moment.
Phil is struggling, 7 laps already on them hard, and now Kwiatkowski chasing down, but here comes Nico in the Mercedes to the left hand side, and Phil loses another position like he's giving them away. Nico in the Aston Martin also through on Lars Kramer. They are having a fight of their own in P8 and P9. The Aston Martin driver is through on the kick Sauber, but what a move from Nico in the Mercedes to get through on the Haas driver. Phil went for the undercut. He was in the lead of this Grand Prix. 3 laps later, he's down to P6. Does that tell you all you need to know about tyre degradation around Saudi Arabia? As you can see, VNT Tom already 1.2 behind EvanNye, who is absolutely flying. He was one of my picks at the start of this Grand Prix, and with 9 laps remaining, his pick might come true. Zawardek 7 tenths behind VNT Tom in the Alpine. Then comes Kikowski in the McLaren. Nico 4 tenths. He's on fresher tyres than the Papaya driver in front of him. And Phil already a second behind.
Yeah, he's really struggling as Phil, and just tumbling down the grid as that's Nico nearly into the wall there through turn 22. That was a very close for the Mercedes driver, the former race leader and pole sitter, of course. But Sviatek now making a move on VNT Tom, and clearly the Haas driver thinks that he's the one who can challenge EvanNye for this race lead. They're going to have the DRS to their advantage, of course, so they'll be able to swap round and try and catch up to the Aston Martin driver. But at the moment, EvanNye still looks in full control of this race. We've got some swaps for position further back as well. Lars Kramer again getting past Nico, but look at the gap now to Phil and Kevin Zonneberg, just 1.2 seconds. So it's looking like they're going to get themselves into the top 6, these two who stayed out a little longer than everyone else. But I think beyond that is going to be a struggle. 2 seconds to Nico, and these guys look like the class of the field at the moment, other than EvanNye himself, who's extending that gap to Sviatek through Sector 1. But Sviatek is going to give it everything, and of course VNT Tom is going to want to get that place back. And if I think if that gap goes above 2.5 to 3 seconds, I think these drivers are going to be more focused on trying to get second place than challenging EvanNye for the win, unless we get some more drama later in this race.
Yeah, EvanNye 2.1 clear, but here comes, that is Lars Kramer on IRT Phil, and the Sauber goes up the inside. That is a fantastic overtake. Now here comes Nico in the Aston Martin. He knows Phil is struggling. His tyres are 5 laps fresher as Phil slips and slides as he comes around turn 23. And now that DRS enabled, the rear wing open, but he's got no battery. Into the slipstream goes Nico in the Aston Martin. He'll go down the inside of turn 27. Later on the brakes goes Nico, and through goes the Aston Martin on the house. Nothing that Phil can do about that. And then here comes Tom in the Alpine on Zavardek down into turn 1, and Nico late on the brakes on the Papaya McLaren. Wheel to wheel go the McLaren and the Mercedes, but it's Nico that comes through on Kikowski.
Oh, that was all on the line there for Nico down into turn 1. What a move that was. Incredibly brave from the Mercedes driver to go for it there. Gatkowski left him the room, and it was just enough for Nico to squeeze himself down the inside and have the outside line with the better grip for turn 2. He's up to 4th place. The win might be a little bit too far for him, although he did look quick in the first stint compared to EvanNye. So if he can get himself to the front of this train, he might be able to close that gap. But Sviatek, I think he doesn't have the raw pace to catch EvanNye. He lost a lot of time when he was at the front of this train, and Tom is losing significantly less at the moment. But EvanNye just looks in a class of his own at the moment. He looks incredibly comfortable in that Aston Martin with just 7.5 laps left to go. Tom 2.1 behind. This might turn into a battle for second place, and Nico, I think, is going to feel hard done by that VSC, and he's going to want to get himself towards the front as soon as he can. Lars Kramer making up another place. Up to 6th place he goes. Remember, he's on the freshest tyres of anyone in the top 6, with Nico, the F3 champion, just behind as well. Sviatek gets back to P2, which will not be what this train wants. Nico again late on the brakes, but this time not with a move, nearly into the back of the Alpine. I'm not sure if there was contact, but I think he's just about gotten away with it. Kevin Zonneberg really struggling in that V-carb car. Nico trying to make his way through, but there's no way through here, of course, through Sector 1. EvanNye with the fastest lap further back, but he's a long way behind, Nathan.
He is. There's nothing that he could probably do there in that Aston Martin. I mean, talking of Nico, if he can get past Tom in the Alpine and then even navigate around the house of Zawardek, he can catch EvanNye here. I think he'll be very close to him in 6 laps time, even with that 1 lap fresher hard compound tyres. They seem like they fall off very quickly, as we've seen from Phil, who's had to pit again for fresh hard compound tyres. So we can see that they don't last that long. And EvanNye has already done 8 laps. Tom in the Alpine already done 9. But then you've got Nico in the Mercedes only done 7. Will them 2 laps be costly come the end of this Grand Prix as he chases down the Alpine of Tom in front? Jensen with that 3-second time penalty. Here comes Nico in the Aston Martin, through on Kevin Zunneberg, down in towards turn 27. The Aston Martin is through. What about IRT Seb? Jensen on Sapala, the VCAB driver, through on the Alpine, up to P11, but he does have that time penalty as well. Well, there's a few overtakes happening now. Here comes Seb and here comes Kevin Zunneberg back on Nico, but he doesn't go for the move down in towards turn 1.
That was very close to disaster there, but they've gotten away with it. Just thinking of a move there was Kevin Zunneberg, but he couldn't make it stick and backed out just in time. Zviadek, meanwhile, it was this sector 1 that he struggled so much against EvanNye in earlier in this race a few laps ago, and this time he gets it a little better. The gap remains constant at about 2.1 seconds, but Tom will certainly be impatient behind him, as will the pole sitter Nico. He will be gutted if he misses out on a podium today, because he's had such a great drive up to this point, but the circumstances of the race just haven't gone his way. Maybe the Mercedes duo could have pitted a lap earlier and avoided the problems that the undercut caused. But, you know, you can't do if, buts and maybes in Formula 1. You've got to stick with your guns. And Nico now has got to fight for this podium. And so, no, that's going to be a spanner in the works for him, though. A penalty through turn 22. And 3 seconds added to his race time is going to be oh so costly in his run for this podium. Lars Kramer, meanwhile, just behind, getting the move done on Gatkowski. And don't count him out for the podium in this race yet, because he is flying on those 7-lap-old hard tyres. He's got the DRS as well, so he can defend from the McLaren. And Nico with the penalty, if Lars Kramer can get past him, it's just one more driver between him and the podium, but he's running out of laps, Nathan.
He is, and as you said, only 4 laps to go. And Lars Kramer, if he can catch up to Nico, now that Nico's got that time penalty, his tyres are 3 laps fresher than Tom's and 2 laps fresher than EvanNye and Zavardek. But Nico will be absolutely kicking himself about that time penalty. 3 seconds. It's touching. Kramer is already back within the DRS range of the Mercedes in front, so you can see what's happening here, you can see what's playing out. But 4 laps is such a short amount of time. Can anything happen? EvanNye has done an incredible job, and there goes Sam Van, retires in the pit lane in that McLaren. But EvanNye, can he do it? Can he keep his foot on the pedal and get the race victory?
He's doing exactly what he needs to at the moment. That gap has remained stable the last few laps, and as long as it doesn't come down, he is in prime position to take his first win of this F2 season. The championship leader Max van der Geest out of this race, so the championship's going to be blown wide open after today. Zviadek, though, gaining a bit of time through the final sector, but it's not enough at the moment. 4 laps to go at the end of this one, and they are running out of time rapidly. Will EvanNye start struggling on those older tyres? Sometimes you see drivers have been worse with their tyre management over the course of a race, and maybe that could come to bite EvanNye if he hasn't been kind to his tyres. You've already seen the gap come down there through turns 1 and 2, 1.8 seconds, and he'll be getting a little bit sweaty as that gap comes down there, but through sector 1 gains a bit back. So it's definitely a mental game when you're managing a gap like this, Nathan. It can be so difficult to get it out your head when the gap comes down by a tenth and goes down from 2 seconds to 1.9. It looks like a big change on your screen, and it can really get in your head sometimes. So EvanNye has just got to keep his cool, keep his focus on this incredibly tricky circuit to secure the win that he looks destined for.
Yeah, as you said, even when it's just that 2 seconds down to the 1.9, I know that EvanNye will be looking in the top left with his eyes, and he'll be spotting that time just dwindling away a little bit, and he'll see the 2 drop to the 1. And as much as the drivers won't admit it, it will affect him at some point. Here comes Lars Kramer around the outside of Nico in the Mercedes. The Kick Sauber has done it with 3 laps to go. Lars Kramer is past the Mercedes driver. Only VRT Tom, and remember, Lars Kramer's tyres are so much fresher than the top 3. Is this it? Is it destined to be Lars Kramer's time here in Saudi Arabia as he's up to P4 and chases down the Alpine in front of him?
Not a lot of ERS left on any of these drivers either. They're all fairly even, so Lars Kramer's got a great opportunity here. He is absolutely killing it at the moment on those younger, hard tyres. Sipala and Jensen swapping positions further back. There's a big battle for 11th place going on down here. Phil and Jensen side by side. Phil, remember, led this race not all that long ago, and now he's out the points and doesn't look like he's got any shot at the points. He had to pit again, as some people predicted in the chat. So Phil well out of this one after he looked to be a contender. But EvanNye now 1.7 seconds. It's coming down slowly but surely. But Zviadek, is he going to run out of time here? 1.8 seconds. VNT Tom is just behind, but he's got Lars Kramer for company, who's going to be hungry for a podium. He's had a fantastic drive up to this point. It's been a brilliant comeback from him. The VSC helped him out, yes, but it still takes skill to make it work, and Nico has made a mistake and he's out of this race, and Kevin Sonnenberg couldn't avoid his car. I think he got away with damage somehow. I don't know how on earth there's no damage to that V-car, but Lars Kramer now down the inside of Tom into the final corner and down towards lap 24 of 25. Can he get it done? I think he has done. Tom is just behind, but he's not got the ERS to compete, and Lars Kramer into the podium positions, and maybe P2 is what he's destined for here. Just 2 laps to go for him to do it.
This is absolutely incredible, Ghost. As you said previously, I think the Mercedes should have gone for that undercut. They've gone from P1 to P2 to both being out of the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. But Lars Kramer, he did it in Austria. He came back to scratch a podium away from the drivers. He's doing it again here in round 2. Lars Kramer 8 tenths behind Zviadek, who is going to be a sitting duck when the Kick Sauber gets that DRS, as they are 1.8 behind EvanNye with 1.5 laps to go. What an incredible, fantastic battle we've had here, and Lars Kramer, oh my god, take a bow. This is phenomenal work, a great strategy, 2 laps fresher. We said about the tyres falling off, we've seen it with IRT Phil. He led the race, he's down to P10. It just goes to show that these tyres and the degradation around here in Jeddah is so high. But here comes Nico on the back of Gagowski, going down towards turn 26 and 27. Is he going to go later on the brakes around the outside? Is he going to try the old switcheroo into towards the DRS? And he can't make the move just yet, but it's Lars Kramer that chases down the Haas driver on the very final lap.
Down towards turn 1 for the 25th and final time today. Zviadek just about holding on from Lars Kramer, but he's going to be so quick through sector 1 is the Kick Sauber driver. He has been all race long. EvanNye now, the gap's coming down as well, but he's still in full control here as long as he doesn't give the DRS to the Haas driver. But Lars Kramer's going to be hoping for that P2. I think his goal would have been to get on the podium, but he can smell P2 just in front of him. Another mistake further back, that is, I think it was Sipala who's actually being lapped, actually, so not a mistake from him. But yeah, from the front row lockout from the Mercedes duo to a double DNF is just about as big a disaster as you can possibly get. Heroes to zeros for them, but it's all about EvanNye today. 1.6 seconds, just a few corners to go for the Aston Martin driver. Can Lars Kramer get close enough to Zviadek? The Haas driver's done an excellent job to keep that gap at around 6 or 7 tenths. He's wide though, very wide through turn 22. That's going to be the opportunity Lars Kramer needed. He's got the DRS down towards the final corner. Can he get this move done? Has he got any ERS left in the tank? No. no, he's not close enough. It's going to be a drag race to the line, but I think Swiatek's done enough. But what a drive from this man. EvanNye in the Aston Martin wins the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix in PSF2. Swiatek does manage to hold off Lars Kramer for second, but what a drive from the Kick Sauber driver to snatch that podium away. VNT Tom finishes fourth by 700ths from Gatkowski, who finished in the top 5. Nico, F3 champion, can only manage P6, but still a great recovery from him. Sieb into P7. The game's DNF'd Nico because he left the session early, but I promise you he finished in 6th place. And also that DNF from the Mercedes of Nico has pushed another driver into the points. I think it was Phil who snatched a point away at the end there, so he'll be happy with that. But what a drive from EvanNye, Nathan.
Oh my God, incredible. EvanNye is your guy. That was a brilliant, outstanding Grand Prix, and the Aston Martin driver timed it to perfection, did what he needed to do, and he has got the race victory. Lars Kramer from out of nowhere, once again on the podium, from 11th on the grid. He did it in Austria, he did it in Jeddah. Will he do it for round 3? What a Grand Prix, Ghost.
And if Lars Kramer can keep pulling out those kinds of results, those kinds of unexpected results, you never know. He could be in with a shot at the title. Unfortunately, I've got a black screen on the stream, which is not ideal. You know, what can I do with EA?
I've
sometimes?
got the results, don't worry, guys. I've got EvanNye in P1, Swiatek in P2, then Lars Kramer, VNT Tom, Gekowski, Seb, Rafi, Kevin Zunneberg, IRT Phil, and Ivan Eskrig in your top 10.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. And, you know, it was an incredible race from start to finish. There were so many stories, so much drama as the race unfolded, so many things that could have gone wrong and did for many of the drivers, but what a drive it was from the man from Norway, EvanNye, to take the race victory, and Lars Kramer as well. I think has got to be my driver of the day, Nathan. I don't know about you. There's a few contenders, but Lars Kramer, he may have gotten lucky with the VSC, but it was an excellent drive on those slightly fresher tyres to take full advantage of them. I
agree with you, Ghost. Definitely Lars Kramer from P11 on the grid to make up that many positions in Saudi Arabia. Yes, he got the strategy right, but he's done it again. He did it in Austria. He's done it again in round 2. I mean, he absolutely driver of the day for me as well.
Yeah, fantastic stuff from all the drivers today, and especially those podium sitters. I think all 3 of them had an exceptional race today and fully deserve that accolade. But plenty of stories, like we said, the Mercedes front row lockout, heroes in qualifying and in the first stint. They were flying. No one seemed to be able to touch them. EvanNye was just about staying with them, but he was really struggling. And then they come into the pits, they get undercut by a few drivers, and Max, the race winner from last week, gets into a collision with Chris down through turn 2 as he's coming out the or not as he's coming out the pit lane, but the next lap. So he'll have been gutted with that, and I'm sure not particularly happy. And then Nico with the mistake at turn 22 as well, right at the end of the race, taking himself out. I don't think there was contact. I think he just made a mistake. So tricky race for the Mercedes. They'll be devastated to turn a 1-2 in qualifying into 0 points, but you can't take anything away from the drivers who managed to finish this race and get some great points today.
Oh, definitely. So good to watch these drivers.
You're very quiet. I don't know what's happened there, Nathan.
Oh, sorry about that. I think I had to turn my mic down because it was crackling on stream, and then I turned it down too much, you couldn't hear me. So we'll try and get a good balance for the rest of the season, Ghost. Don't worry.
Yeah, no
it's all trial and error. But yeah, it was a phenomenal Grand Prix. It was exactly what we were hoping for. We even had rain. I mean, when do we have rain in Jeddah? So the drivers were already being challenged right from the get-go. But these drivers, they're just on a different level, and the strategies and the calls that they make in certain parts of the race just set them apart from different drivers. So yeah, brilliant race.
Absolutely. And, well, we're going to be doing it all again next week, of course. Well, it gives us plenty of time to catch our breath after a fascinating race here in Jeddah. We will be heading to the historic Spa-Francorchamps circuit in Belgium next week, which is sure to be another fantastic spectacle here in PSF2. Don't miss it, and we will see you all there, I'm sure. But until then, for this week, it is goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me. Thank you.
And we'll see you all next time. Have a great rest of your week, everyone, and goodbye.